Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Adults Health and Housing Cabinet meeting for Monday, the 25th of January. On the call today, we have Dominic Monaghan, Karen Squires and Lindsay Stevens from Democratic Services, Ian Fulliger, Jeremy Mason and Martin Brown from Strategic Housing. I'm Councillor Roy Webb, Cabinet Member for Adults, Health and Housing. Do we have any apologies for the meeting?
No apologies, Councillor Webb.
Thank you. Any late items? There are none. And declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. So if we can move to item 4, which is the tenancy strategy consultation, can I move to Jeremy Mason, who will be presenting the report?
Thank you very much, Councillor Webb. Good morning, everybody. I will give a brief run through of what I think are the key elements to this report and the tenancy strategy to which it relates, and then if there are any questions we can address those in turn. So starting off then, the reason we are presenting this tenancy strategy to the public and proposing that we consult on it is because it is a legal requirement of the Localism Act 2011 that all local authorities must have a tenancy strategy. Our current tenancy strategy is dated now. We need to refresh it and renew it and make it more relevant to the current circumstances. So we have produced this draft and we propose to consult on it for a period of 3 months. The strategy itself addresses issues raised in the Localism Act around the types of tenancy agreements that providers of social housing can offer to their tenants and prospective tenants. In particular, the Act introduced the possibility that for the first time local authorities could offer fixed-term tenancies, often referred to as flexible tenancies, tenancies with an end date, which was a departure from what was previously the practice in the vast majority of cases, that practice being that tenants got lifetime tenancies, subject to adhering to the terms of their tenancy agreement, of course. So local authorities and other housing associations, often referred to as registered providers, have the flexibility to offer fixed-term tenancies, and the tenancy strategy sets out the council's view on when these flexible tenancies should be offered and when we should stick to lifetime tenancies. In a nutshell, that's what it's all about, and that is what the legislation requires it to be about. Our tenancy strategy also addresses the question of affordable rents, because these were also brought in with the Localism Act as part of a wide range of social housing reforms. Getting down to the specific points then, the Council's view is that registered providers should continue to offer lifetime tenancies in the majority of cases. We believe that these are most supportive of our vision for stable communities and for people to have stability where they live. But there are exceptions to that. There are a number of cases where a fixed-term tenancy or some non-lifetime arrangement is more appropriate. And in fact, we already use different types of tenancies for those circumstances. For example, if we have a property which we know we are going to regenerate later on, or maybe even demolish and rebuild, there's little point in putting a family in there on a lifetime tenancy. So in those cases, we would give them a shorter term arrangement. That is already recognised in the current strategy, but the new strategy goes a step further and proposes that we use flexible tenancies in the case of accommodation for homeless households that will be moving into temporary accommodation and move-on accommodation that isn't designed to be for life, but is intended to provide an interim step towards more stable and long-term accommodation in the future. So that is the major change from our previous strategy: flexible tenancies for homeless households moving into temporary and move-on accommodation. The other policy objectives and approach we take are largely unchanged. That is, just to repeat, lifetime tenancies to be used in the majority of cases. We could talk about affordable rents as well. Chair, do you want me to go into that, or shall we stick?
Yes, please.
Okay. So affordable rents are, again, a new type of rent which was brought in with the Localism Act. It enables housing providers to charge up to 80% of market rent. Often, this will be higher than a typical rent you would pay for a housing association or council property, known as a social rent. 80% of market rent could be substantially higher, though in certain property types there's not a huge amount of difference, often in one-bed property types, for example. But for four-bed properties, you might find a bigger difference. The approach that we recommend, and which we'll use for our own new stock and we recommend for other housing associations and providers, is that where affordable rents are used, every effort is made to ensure that they remain affordable for prospective tenants. Even 80% of a market rent could exclude a number of people, those on lower incomes. So our recommended approach is that a case-by-case stance is taken on new developments and re-let of properties on affordable rents. That is essentially unchanged from our previous strategy. We still think it's the pragmatic, sensible and compassionate thing to do.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
You're welcome.
Any other further comments from the officer team? Martin, Ian? In that case, as this is going out to consultation, and it will be a 3 months consultation, which is quite a long consultation in council terms, how are we ensuring that people can have access to this consultation? I know it will go online as part of our council website consultations that are ongoing. Are there any opportunities for people who don't have digital services to get copies of this consultation? That's the first question. The second question, we have a number of registered providers across the city. There is guidance in this documentation to give them strategies that they can work up themselves. Do they need to be compliant with the council's strategy, and will they be able to input into this consultation? And the final point about the flexible tenancies, we are, just to be clear, only using it for temporary accommodation for homeless people, so that we can get them off the streets, moved into accommodation to do that, and then move them into permanent accommodation if they wish to take that further step. So it's purely that cohort. Can we be clear on that?
Yes, sorry, I'm just starting my video, if it will let me. Yes, we can be clear on that. I'll address your points in the reverse order. The only change here exactly is for the cohort you've just mentioned, homeless households. This is part of the housing pathways that we've set up as part of our homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. So by allowing the use of flexible tenancies for homeless households, we can get them off the streets more quickly into some interim stroke, temporary stroke, move on accommodation as part of a pathway into more long-term permanent accommodation. The strategy does mention the use of flexible tenancies for two other groups, but it makes no definite proposals on those, but it's worth a brief mention of those, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, please.
Many local authorities also use flexible tenancies for very large properties which are in short supply, generally 4-bed or more, and also properties which have significant disability-related adaptations once they're no longer needed by the current occupants. In other words, if you provide a 4 or 5-bed property to a large family with children, when the children grow up and leave home, the remaining, couple or parents don't need a 5-bed property anymore. Clearly, some authorities will say, right, we're going to end your tenancy, you need to move out. Now, we're not proposing to do that in Derby, but we are saying it is something we need to consider because there's such a shortage of these properties. There are many people living in overcrowded properties on the housing waiting list, on the housing register. And is it fair, is it balanced that 1 or 2 people live in a 5-bed property while a large family are stuck in too small a property? This is a difficult balance to make, but we welcome people's views on it. We don't have a definite proposal on it yet, but we do welcome people's views on it. Similarly, with properties that have substantial adaptations, but the disabled person no longer lives there, is there a case to say someone else with a disability who needs those adaptations, they should perhaps have the use of that property instead? So these are areas which we welcome the views of the public on. But for now, the proposal is just for homeless households, yes. The second point you raised was around housing associations, registered providers. The legislation says they are legally required to have regard to our tenancy strategy, but they are not bound by it. So we hope they will take notice of it and bear it in mind in drawing up their own policies and strategies, but at the end of the day they can choose a different path if they decide that's the best course of action.
Okay, and those with the digital deficit?
Yes. Well, again, this is a challenge with all our consultations. There is a consultation plan appended to the report. We will be using an online survey, as you say. Social media outlets are more and more used by a wide range, and platforms rather, by a wide range of the public. We will have a press release, but we will also offer hard copies of the consultation and the survey questionnaire to anyone that would like one. We'll post them out, we'll give you a prepaid envelope. You can send everything back in to our consultation team at the council in writing if you don't wish to use an online method of giving us your views. Similarly, we will offer these questionnaires and copies of the strategy to housing associations and others in direct contact with tenants and prospective tenants.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Are there any further comments from anybody?
No, thanks, Chair.
No, thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Can I move the recommendation then that we go out to consultation on the draft strategy, which is recommendation 2.1. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, everybody. That went very smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you.